Oh, yeah.
Hey, everybody. We are joined here today by Alexine, Jed, and Sarah, and we're going to be discussing side hustles. So why don't we start with a brief, 30-second introduction by each of us?
Sounds good. Hey everyone, I'm Alexine Mudawar. I am CEO of Women in Sales, which is a community for women in the field of sales, as you can imagine, focused on elevating, uplifting, and promoting success for women in our field and ensuring a level playing field. And it actually started as a side hustle and recently became a full hustle. So excited to chat through this conversation.
Yeah, my name is Jed Mahrle. My main hustle is I'm the director of sales over at Mailshake. We're a sales engagement and email deliverability platform. But yeah, I got a couple different side hustles and some ones that are kind of more in my imagination. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Me too. I love side hustles. I'm Sarah. I'm an account executive. That's my main hustle and where my W-2 comes from. So I sell software. I've been selling software for about 6 years now. That's what I do. And I've got side hustles too. I got hella side hustles. I got side hustles in my brain.
Well, let's start with a pretty basic, simple question. What was your first side hustle? What was the job that you were working at? How difficult was it to juggle those two? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Women in Sales was originally Women in Sales Club. So that was my first true side hustle, I think. And it was when I was working full-time as a strategic account executive, and I had the highest quota on my team at the time, and I was managing a business full-time as well. So it was challenging in full transparency, and it was really tough. I think for particularly kind of switching between roles, like I would do. So what I originally tried was I would do like an hour in the morning was like Women in Sales Club, and then I would like switch back to Strat AE. Lunchtime I'd have like an hour and switch back to Women in Sales Club, and then switch back to Strat AE, and then like 3 to 4 hours in the evening for Women in Sales Club again. I found that to be incredibly challenging, and it was just really hard. And so what I did was set a couple revenue targets, and I was like, if the business hits X, I'm going to cut loose. And then I hit those revenue targets at least 3 times, maybe 4. And I was like, I need to make a decision and just roll with it. And here I am. And I made that decision end of last year. So,
but it sounds like you went straight into skip the side hustle and basically full-time job, right? Like you were spending 4 or 5 hours a day on it, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean, in the sense that like, I guess I think of it like financially, it was like a side hustle originally. And then, but yeah, I mean, timing wise, it very much was almost a full-time job originally. It actually, the premise wasn't for it to be a full-time role at any point. What started to happen was like sponsors and partners and different tech companies were like coming at me. And so it started to feel like I'm almost doing this a disservice if I don't spend more time on it. And so I almost felt like, I don't know, circumstances like pushed me over that ledge into full hustle. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Did you start the LLC straight up from the get-go, or did you wait a little bit?
Good question. So I am nothing if not like very organized and paranoid at the same time. And so I had an LLC immediately. I like got everything set up. I had a CPA right out the gates. And then I also had a legal resource immediately too. So all of my contracts to this day, even if it's like a 1-pager, even if it's an NDA, goes to my legal guy. He approves everything, brings it back to me. So it almost runs like a full kind of like company engine, like with the resources around me. But I found that to be somewhat calming, at least that I knew.
I love how organized you were for something that you didn't even intend to make it a full-time position. That's pretty awesome.
The paranoia is more paranoia,
okay,
but yes, but it worked, and I'm glad that I did it that way. But you know, you can also, I know people have started the LLC a little bit later, done things in a different direction. So I think if anything, the CPA would probably be like the first, even before the LLC. I would just get a CPA or someone that can advise you on when to do what with the business and how to forecast taxes. Like there's a lot of surprise money things that pop up when money starts coming in. It gets really exciting, but you don't think about what money needs to go back out. So that's where people get into trouble.
Taxes.
Yes, they're always there.
Yeah. And Jed, what's your initiation with side hustles?
My first one was probably my newsletter. So when I first got into tech sales, like 4.5 years ago, I started a weekly newsletter, and the goal was just to write about the things I was learning. So I use a platform called Substack. It's pretty popular now. The cool thing about Substack is that when I got in, it's now like fairly large. Substack has its own SEO. And so because I was one of the initial people to write like a sales newsletter on this platform, now that it's gotten bigger, my newsletter has ranked pretty high. And so I'm getting emails and signups through LinkedIn, webinars or things like this. But most of my growth actually comes through the Substack network, and it's still relatively young. So if anybody wants to start a newsletter, I would definitely recommend Substack. But that's been super fun. So it just started as like me just writing weekly. And then eventually I started building somewhat of a following. And I started learning more marketing strategies, like creating lead magnets to get more email signups, doing webinars, things of that nature. And then some folks started reaching out to do sponsorships from there. There's even kind of a paywall to that. So that's been really fun because it does two things. It kind of holds me accountable to actually like learn new stuff, so I have new things to talk about. But then at the same time, it helps me become a better writer. But yeah, there's lots of opportunity. I haven't like gone full in on it or anything like that. It's just my goal is to continue to be in sales and then write what I'm learning about through the newsletter, and then slowly build a very large audience. There's some revenue through the sponsorships and things of that nature. But yeah, that's been the main thing.
How long did it take from start? Because I imagine you started the newsletter. Well, I'm curious actually. Did you start the newsletter with the idea of like, oh, I'm going to monetize this and I'm going to get sponsored?
No, right? I didn't know that.
So how long was that journey before you were like, oh wait? And did you reach out or did they reach out?
They reached out. That's how I did. I like the people are probably familiar with Alex Ramosi, right? I'm a big fan of him, but he always talks about like create until somebody has to pay you money, and I like that mindset because that's how you know you really have something to sell. But yeah, so like the first year, I didn't reach 100 subscribers. It was just like my mom, my friends, things like that. And then I started like actually knowing what I was talking about because like you find your voice. Once you write every week for a year, then you figure out like where your actual niche is. And that's when I actually branded it as the Practical Prospecting newsletter and started promoting it. And then the next year, I think I got to 1,000. Wow. And then it started increasing a lot. So now we're at like 13,000 going into like, I guess the fourth year or third year or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah. And we'll get back to that. We'll start with Sarah, but I am curious to learn, like, how did you even start to get yourself familiar with like, oh, well, they're offering X and it should be Y. Like that takes a lot of confidence and research. And that's pretty unique.
Yeah. I can dive
sure, go ahead.
Yeah. Are you talking about in terms of like sponsorships?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't know anything. So like the first person was like, and that was also a mistake.
Like $10.
The first guy was like, let me pay you $300 to put my SaaS product on your newsletter. I was like, hell yeah. So I just threw it on. I didn't know what the product did. And this was like two or 3 years ago. And I was like, I just got $300. And then I started realizing I'm going to tarnish my brand if I just start throwing whatever product people throw money at me for. And so like dialed it back. And I was like, the only sponsorships I'm doing are things that I'm actually using because my newsletter is about what I'm actually doing. Right. So if I can promote, and I found my niche of who I'd want sponsors for, it's people that, because most of my newsletter is sales reps. So it has to be something they can sign up for on their own. Right. I'm not going to promote something that they have no budget to buy. They're like, that's cool, Jed, but I can't do anything. I'm just an SDR and AE. So it has to be like some sort of PLG thing where they can sign up on their own monthly or free, something that I'm actually using that fits into the script of what I'm talking about in the newsletter. And then I just started doing research and talking to other people that have newsletters. Devin, obviously, I know he helped me with that as well because he has experience in that side of things. So yeah. Yeah,
nice. Good. Thank you for sharing. We'll dive into it a little bit deeper later. Sarah, what was your journey like with side hustles?
So my first side hustle was, I had a completely different career before I went in sales. So I was working at a nonprofit, the National Speech and Debate Association, and I ran their social media and built educational content for teachers who were teaching speech and debate programs in high school and middle school. And so my first side hustle was, number one, coaching speech and debate at some local high schools and also some colleges in the area. And then, so I'd go once a week to at least one high school and then on and off to different colleges that would bring me in to check out their students' performances before they'd head to nationals or if they were going to a big competition. And then I was acting. Like my first acting gig that I had that was paid, I didn't realize that I was auditioning for an actual professional theater. I was just looking for auditions because I just graduated from college. I moved to Des Moines, Iowa in the dead of winter, and I didn't have power for the first week, and I slept on the floor. I had no furniture. And it's like true college graduate first job. And I thought, well, I don't know anyone and I don't know how I'm going to make friends. So I'll do what I've always done, which is I'll go be in a play, because if I have a project to work on with someone, then organically there's got to be some friendships that stem out of that. So I went and I showed up. I was like the last person to audition for this show. turned out it was a professional theater. It was a paid gig.
Wow.
And like, and they cast me in the role, and I was like, all right, great. Well, now I'm a professional.
Nice.
So that's what I was doing. So I do like, you rehearse for about 20 hours a week doing a show like that. And then, so I, go to work in the morning, and then eat dinner and then head to rehearsal till 11 p.m. And that was sort of my schedule. And then in between be going and coaching speech and debate or going and judging competitions.
That's pretty interesting. How old were you when you were asked to come and judge college students speaking? And
I mean, typically you get pulled like as soon as you graduate. It's like,
wow.
all right, we need judges. So same with like high school. As a college kid judging high school students.
And it is related to side hustles, not necessarily how much revenue or anything, but was there ever an imposter syndrome of, I just graduated, how am I going to be the expert to judge them before their meeting?
No.
Hell yeah. That's awesome.
No, I've been working at speech camps, and I've been pretty ingrained in the speech and debate community. The school that I went to is Western Kentucky, and although no one's heard of them for anything at all except for their journalism program, which is pretty good. They have like the #1 speech and debate team in the country, and they're the only team to have won both national tournaments and internationals in the same year. So I've been around like really legit coaches and teachers, so I felt pretty confident. Maybe I was like overly confident, but I felt pretty confident.
Hey, hell yeah, that's awesome. So both of their side hustles, they're still actively working. Are you still working on that first one? Do you still do anything for speech? Or
no, so I basically like coaching speech is what sustained me through pretty much all of the time that I spent acting professionally. So that was like a great way to make money. So when I moved to California and I was living up in the Bay Area, I worked as a barista, and that's how I got my health insurance.
hell yeah.
I worked at a startup as a front desk girl at Optimizely, and that's also how I got health insurance at one point. And then I would be doing shows whenever I, was in a show, but typically those only last a month or two. And then, you rehearse for a month, you perform for a month, and then go find the next thing. And then I would teach an after-school program down in Fremont. And so I'd always have sort of like a bunch of different irons in the fire.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went into tech sales full-time, the first year I continued to act and I was doing shows, but it became really difficult to be focused on what I was doing and be, have all my lines memorized and be like creating like art that I was proud of. So when I joined Gong in 2019, I said, I won't be in any shows. I still produced a couple shows, but I wasn't going to be acting in them. So the hours that I spent, and I said, I'll give myself 1 year and I'll see if I can be successful. And if I can't be successful in this sales role, then I guess I'm not cut out for sales and I should just go do something else. So I produced a couple shows, then COVID happened, and I was like, well, I'm not going to do any Zoom readings because those are awful. And then that's when people started tapping me on the shoulder to do like SDR Nation or to do Sales Impact Academy or bring me in to, do a talk or run a training for their team. Because one of the other jobs that I had was I was a middle school teacher. So I have a little bit of a background in thinking about curriculum construction and how do people learn and how do you articulate something in digestible bite-sized things and then help people become true practitioners. Yeah. So that's always just something that's like an undercurrent to what I like to do on the side.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm really curious to hear from all three of you in terms of like timing, right? So you were working full-time almost on the business. Did it create any challenges with your AE role? Jed, currently, has Mailshake or your previous job with Panda, because I believe you started your newsletter while you were with PandaDoc, right?
Yeah.
And then for you, like Gong's a pretty large company, well known. You're speaking out loud about your engagements outside of Gong. Like, do they have any issues, or how does your manager approach it? Right? It's very interesting. A lot of people, I feel like, are afraid sometimes to start side hustles because what are my coworkers going to think? Is my boss going to be okay? Am I going to be questions about how much time? So let's dive into a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's a really fair call out. Like the visibility piece is very real. Like for me, I mean, I already kind of talked about one of my challenges, which was just like kind of switching roles. Yeah, just constantly. And I found that just to be like such a just kind of like a whiplash feeling at all times.
And did you do anything to help you, some sort of process, or did you just ride the boat for?
I was just rocked and rolled through it. I mean, I just didn't know. Like, I'm like, I don't know. I didn't really have any good reference points
Sure.
or like anybody that could tell me what to do, because a lot of people around me had already like gone in full time on their thing, and so their advice was just like, quit today, like go all in. And I was like, I don't want to. Like, I still make really good. So I was making really good money in 2 places. So I was like, how long can I sustain this? Which may not be right, but that was like where my mindset was. And another big focus was like, how do I set aside a nest egg to ensure that when I do make the jump, it's not like I'm jumping off a cliff. I have like a little bit of a safety net there. So that was something I was like really dead set on. But I think the visibility piece, as far as challenges, you know, at least for me, I've seen this go the wrong way for some other people, where they were kind of gated about like sharing during the interview process when they were talking to new companies, like that they had a side hustle. I lean to the other side. I'm a big advocate of just being like really transparent and honest about what I'm working on, because if I'm active on social and I'm doing this, they're going to see it anyways. And so either I bring it up front and then there shouldn't be any issue after the fact, or it comes up later. And so I have had, you know, friends and acquaintances who got fired for side hustles because they weren't honest about it up front and they didn't share it. And so I will say, like, that's a challenge I've seen, and I've been behind the scenes and talked to people about or coached people through. And so that's why I always advocate for just being honest. So as I think about like visibility, sure, there were some like colleagues who I think like didn't get it or it didn't make sense. At least the last manager I had when I was in my strat AE role, he was really a rock solid manager, like one of my favorite managers. Shout out Josh.
Yeah.
And he knew like from the get-go, and he's like, part of the reason I think you'd be a really strong candidate is I can see like who you are already from like watching what you do on social and watching what you care about and hearing some of these things that resonate with you. And I actually like think you would be a culture add to the organization. And so for me, in some ways it benefited, but it's a big consideration people have to make. Do I want to talk about it before, or do I want to deal with the potential implications of talking about it later?
2 follow-up questions. One a little personal, you don't have to answer,
Okay.
but I'm curious, like, what was your runway number? I have 4 months of savings. I feel comfortable quitting.
Okay.
Was there a number?
I'll frame it in the terms. For me, I wanted to have at least a year of, like, I could track year to date, like what I would spend an entire year between travel, between like leisure, expenses, mortgage, everything. And I was like, if I have a year set aside, then even if the bottom falls out for an entire year, hypothetically, I should be good. And so I hit that more than, and so I was like, at what point do you just kind of make a decision? So
Yeah.
For me, I chose a year. I know other people would do like 6 months, 3 months. But one of the things my last CEO actually said to me when I told him I was going full time, and he was super encouraging. He was like, don't use 3 months. Because originally I was like, I'll use 3 months as kind of the checkpoint. And if I make it to 3 months and I'm successful by then it means I made the right decision. He was like, it's too short of a time frame. It's not the right time frame to use. And so that's why I chose the year as the nest egg, because I wanted to make sure I wasn't selling myself short and just giving it like 3 months. And thank God I didn't, because that first 3 months isn't going to be like, you're not going to be printing paper usually. Like usually that's like a lot of the build, and it's the messy stuff, and it's, you know, you're learning a lot.
I love that. I never thought about it that way, right? Like, think about 3 months is too little. Your sales cycle, prospecting, all of that, right? That's pretty good advice. And the second question is for both of you, or if you manage a team as well, for all 3 of you, now as a CEO, right? You presumably have employees or some people under you. What are your thoughts and views on them having side hustles? And Jed, you also manage people. So Alexine, what are your thoughts on your team having them?
I mean, I'm the only person full time. So I'm like, I do have a team, and they all work on like different projects underneath Women in Sales, and they're all incredible. And I think all of them actually have side hustles. So of course I'm like, do it, like to pedal to the metal. So I'm really a proponent of it. And even if I was still with the company, I see side hustles as a way for people to flex and share something that they're really passionate about. So I see it as an ad. And in my mind, if you don't give people those opportunities to work and focus on these things that they're really passionate about, they'll probably end up leaving to go work on them anyways. So either way, you're at the same spot if they leave your company. So I'd rather err on the side of like, I believe that I'm hiring or bringing on the right people who care about this. And with that in mind, I'm going to extend them the flexibility to do the things they're passionate about too.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. So it was 2 questions, right? Yeah. What do you think about the team having, and then the first question was like, did PandaDoc ever give you any issues, or currently, right? How do you manage your time? Do you have any processes?
Yeah, I don't manage my time. It's really bad. It's just
Fair.
it's not good. So I do a lot of work on the weekends. But
Mm-hmm.
the interesting thing is like I kind of need my job to do the newsletter because I actually want to be talking about things I'm doing, right? And so the newsletter helps you with the job, like specifically at Mailshake and at PandaDoc, because we sell to sales personas. I'm in a way representing PandaDoc at the time, or now Mailshake's brand, and growing their brand awareness by growing mine. And so I think that's why it's worked really well, is because there's kind of that alignment there, and I'm talking about what I'm doing at Mailshake, so therefore more people are learning about Mailshake, and those are our ICP and our buyer personas. So yeah, I mean that's been fine. And then to answer your question about like my team having it, I just have a very simple answer. I don't think it's that complicated. Like, you have a job to do. If you're doing the job, why is it my business what you're doing outside of your job, right? I think with sales, it's even more specific because you have a number. And so if you're obviously missing your number every month and you're not working as many hours as you should be, then maybe there's an issue. But I've never come across that. And it's the same thing for me. Like if my numbers are lower, we're not hitting the numbers we need to, then I scale back from the side hustle and I focus on that. I think I've always put my W-2 as my main focus. I think particularly for me, just because it fuels the other stuff I do on the side, like with the newsletter. And so if that's not going as well, I shift a little bit more energy there, and then, vice versa. So yeah, that's kind of my perspective on it.
Yeah.
I do the same thing.
Yeah.
My W-2 is my main focus. If I'm hitting my number, then I can say yes to more things. If I'm not hitting my number, I feel concerned about my pipeline, then I say no to more things.
Yeah.
But I think for me, like, having a side hustle is like really important for like my mental health and my happiness and feeling fulfillment, because sales gives me a lot of things that I need to feel like I'm having a fruitful and enjoyable life experience. But working with kids, being able to teach someone, mentorship, I'm not in sales leadership, so I don't get to have those experiences. And I like being an individual contributor right now. I like running my sales cycle. So, for me, it's different, because like, it's great that my side hustles pay me, and I want them to, because that's important to recognize people for their work and to compensate them for their time. But I'm doing a lot of it because I like it.
I have one question, like for both of you, really, there's a lot of things to say yes to, I feel like, as it comes to side hustles. And you kind of alluded to it, Sarah, that like when you're doing well, you can say yes to more things. How do you manage like what you actually say yes to? And like for me, like especially as my newsletter got bigger, I had a hard time of not saying yes to example for like every webinar or podcast. Or how do you all like kind of go about managing that and figuring out what's most important to say yes to and what you should say no to stay focused on your main hustle and the stuff you're doing on the side?
This is a tough question. Yeah, there's two sides. So I have, my business, Women in Sales. So we get approached by partners, sponsors constantly. Here's the deal. Like, not all these are companies that historically have done well with women on their teams, or they have like historic issues. Like, there's companies that have tried to hand us huge checks where I'm like, we cannot take money from you. We cannot put our name next to you. You have had countless, God knows what. So there is that. Yeah, not good. Yeah, it's not good. So it's like there's some like that where it's just like we can't continue to even entertain a conversation. And then on the personal side, similar to you, like this has to, like, as brands are approaching me, the first thing is I started to gate based on like a minimum engagement level. And I was like, I have to have like a certain amount of money to choose to even like have conversations. Cause originally, just like you, I remember like people would be like, through whatever, like a couple $100 for a post. I'm like, oh my God, like it's so exciting. And then you get like deeper into it and you're like, oh wait, people are actually charging a lot more. And thankfully I had a lot of friends in my inner circle who were willing to start sharing with me what they were getting paid. And I was like, oh, not good. And so then I was able to kind of like adapt. So I started setting like minimum engagement amounts, and like, this is, what a project would need to look like. I need to be able to use my own voice. I cannot do like an infomercial for you. It's not going to be authentic. It has to be a product. Like, you have to give me a license to it. So every one of my engagements I have licenses for, even if it's a paid product. I'm like, I need to have a license. I need to get it in there. You have to let me talk about it in my voice and trust that obviously, if I'm doing an engagement with you, I'm going to talk about it in a positive light. So
Right.
I don't know. But it is tough. I oversimplified it, but I do think like talking to other people, and especially if you have other connections that are content creators that are in this space who are willing to have conversations with you. Even something, I did a post a while back and it was a joke. But I said something along the lines of like, if you guys all keep messing with me, my net 30 is going to start becoming like a net 15. These comments and everything doing due upon invoice on all of our invoices. And I was like, what? And so I changed to that. All of my invoices get turned around in 48 hours now. I'm like, just something as simple as that. I was like, yeah, I thought I was like, net 15, and I was like going hard. And then lo and behold, everybody else is just getting paid the same day. So it's just interesting, like these things that you learn. And so all that, definitely pay attention. Willing and hold true to your value system and make sure like things align with you.
Yeah.
And real quick, you mentioned minimum revenue. Does that correlate to minimum length of engagement at all? Because you mentioned context switching, how that can be a little difficult, right?
Yeah.
So I was just curious.
So I'll have like so typically I'll have like a dollar amount against post, and also based on like what type of like effort it is. So like if I have to like demo a product and do a bunch of stuff and like it's really technical, that's a bigger engagement in my mind. It's not so much like the time length, it's like what are the things in which we're going to work together to produce. And if it's like video content plus like short form written thing plus this plus that, then I'll package it all up. I actually prefer to kind of like knock things out within a quarter. Like I don't really want, unless I have a few clients where they're like long-term engagement on a small project, I want to get it like done in a quarter and be kind of through it. And just because I want to like honor the agreement and just kind of like knock through everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you choose?
I'm so laissez-faire. I'm like, looks cool, sweet, nice, I like it. Or I'm never going to use that. I don't like it. I mean, it's pretty, you know,
Similar approach to him.
Yeah, exactly. I think we're just young and immature and we don't know what we're doing. Teach us.
When did y'all start an LLC for the side hustle? Did you start one? Oh, there we go.
I just pay Uncle Sam quarterly.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I also do that.
Yeah.
I should. My husband keeps wanting me to. My husband is way more like type A about stuff like that.
Well, the benefits are definitely, I'm sure you can talk about it, but the benefits
There's
of having
there's
an
tons
LLC
of
and
benefits.
splitting those up are.
Yeah. No, I know. I'm working on it. Lucas, my husband, is guiding me through the process. We have a financial advisor and we have an accountant, and you know, and I'm like, okay, that sounds good. This is not my expertise. I'm artistic, and you guys do the math.
Is that something you're considering, Jed, or?
Yeah, I'm considering. It's one of those things like on a to-do list. It's like it keeps falling back. But I mean, of course, I pay my taxes and things of that nature. But yeah.
We all pay.
Wink, wink. No, but yeah, I'm in the same boat as Sarah. I don't have my. I haven't, gotten it all together yet. But it's of course something I want to do.
Yeah.
We'll talk.
Well, I really appreciate you guys sharing. It sounds like, from just a quick recap from what I heard, it sounds like transparency on the job, right? Going up to your team and saying, hey, I'm doing or thinking about this. We didn't really come up with any advice in terms of processes for time management. So maybe y'all can help us, right? Because none of us had any advice there. What else did we learn today? Just start. Right? It sounds like personal branding was huge for both of you guys. So in order to get to the paid part, you first had to build your brand, get your subscribers up.
Yeah, focus on consistency first.
Consistency. Yeah, that's super important.
And keep your value system. It's super important. Like whatever you align yourself to, make sure it aligns with your values. Of course, we're here to also align. But yeah, make sure it lines up and like it's something that you feel passionately about and that you're comfortable talking about. Otherwise, it doesn't come through that way. So yeah.
Any shout outs? Go to your website. What's the website? Where can they visit you?
Yeah, sure. So you can either find me on LinkedIn under Alexine Mudawar. We also have a page for women in sales under the name Women in Sales on LinkedIn, and our website is www.women-in-sales.com.
Awesome. Jed, what's your newsletter?
Go to my LinkedIn, type in Jed, and then you'll see Jed Mahrle. There's not a lot of Jeds, and then it'll be in the featured section of my LinkedIn profile. So yeah, go there.
And Sarah, are you looking for any side hustle engagements, or is your plate full?
Dude, like, if you want to hang out, we can talk about it.
Fair enough. And
But yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn.
hell yeah. All right.
My last name is Brazier. It means small fire.
In French or?
Yes, in French.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Nice.
Like a little grill. A Dairy Queen Brazier, that means they have a grill and you can get a burger.
I think that's the perfect way to end this.
Yeah. So.
Thank you for watching, everybody, and help us with time management advice.